Recently, the federal government said it had identified 400 terrorism financiers linked to the Boko Haram insurgent group. This gave rise to calls for the naming and prosecution of such individuals. Now, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, says that the federal government will prosecute the 400 suspected Boko Haram financiers who were arrested by the security agencies. Now, this, the minister says, demonstrates the Buhari-led government's commitment to ending insecurity in the country. So joining me now to talk about this and much more is public affairs analyst and author Adeboye Kalejaye. It's nice to have you join me this morning.
Good morning.
Great.
Thank you. And
Great.
Good morning, viewers.
Yeah. Now, the call, or let me say, the federal government is no longer news. The federal government has said they've arrested about 400 people who are alleged to have financed terrorism in Nigeria, and they will be prosecuted soon. But if you follow the reaction of Nigerians, both home and abroad, from the comments they're making, either physically or on social media, they are saying that federal government, if you've arrested 400 persons, we have not seen the faces of anyone, we've not heard the names of anyone, and all of that. They're becoming a little skeptical about that. Comparing that to when the United Arab Emirates arrested 6 Nigerians that were prosecuted, and everyone knew who they were.
So first and foremost, I must say that the burden of proof is on the accuser. So federal government has come out to say they have a list of 400 people. One, they must do an expose of those 400 people. We must know who they are. If you keep those names in secrecy, then Nigerians will doubt the authenticity of your claim. 2, why do you have to even keep the names in secrecy? And 3, if you are not ready to prosecute, why speculate? Because there is no point saying you have caught people, you have them probably in your custody, you will prosecute them. Why procrastinating? You don't have to procrastinate. Nigerians are waiting, anxiously to know those who have inflicted injury on the nation called Nigeria, to know those who have been financing the Boko Haram, to know those who have really been responsible for the major insecurity challenge that we have in the nation. So we can wait to get those people named and then make them public, and then we can begin the prosecution. Don't let us continue to chase after shadows, after very minute cases. If a person is caught on the road stealing, people maim them, they almost kill them on the road. These are, whereas, like Fela said, the pen robbery. How well have you prosecuted them? So we are waiting. We need government to come out with a full list, and then prosecution should begin. All
right. Now, if you compare this to what the United Arab Emirates did, the point there is, it is assumed that before you would have, like you talked about the evidence of proof, or the burden of proof rather, if you are arresting 400 people, there would have been evidence, there would have been some preliminary investigation as to linking people, linking 1 or 2 persons, and taking this long, a lot of people are saying this could be political or diversionary.
It looks like a fluke. It looks like
so
a
too.
fluke. Because you can't come out and say you have arrested people and you're going to prosecute. If you don't have facts and figures, you can't even detain people beyond the limited time.
24 hours.
The 24 hours. And then if you have to detain people beyond 24 hours, you have to go to seek court permission. You have to prove to the court why you needed to detain these people for purposes of security matters, what the law allows you, so that they don't elope into the thing here. So, one, they have not done that. So if they are still keeping 400 people in custody, hoping to prosecute them, then they are also violating the fundamental human rights of those people.
Especially when they've not been found guilty.
When you have not been found guilty, you are still presumed to be innocent. So as far as I'm concerned, I believe that government must come out and then Nigerians will not hesitate to also challenge government to say, is it not a populist idea to just let us know that the president is working? Because everybody says that, look, we are suffering under insurgency. What is the president doing? So to come out and say, oh, we are working. We have arrested 400 people. Is it not just a stopgap to divert the people from their focus of criticizing and saying that this government must wake up? The National Assembly are crying. The State Houses Assembly are saying, the Nigerian people are complaining. We are posed with insecurity in almost every facet of our living. So therefore, I still take it that government may not necessarily be too factual.
All right. Now, if we assume, let us assume that actually some 400 persons have been prosecuted, what impact will this have? Because we're talking about terrorism that has lasted for close to 11 to 12 years, at least substantively from the time we've been recording 2009 that we recorded outright terrorism in the country. Up until now, just 400. How much or how far would that go in putting an end or mitigating terrorism in the country, if at all?
Well, you are talking about just 400. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step away from home. Let's even see the 400 people. We're not talking about the quantum. And beyond that, I also think that the ordinary person you arrest for terrorism are not the main terrorists. The sponsors are behind. Have you really been able to through your investigation, identify the major sponsors of the people you arrest? The people at the background, the major barons, the major people are always shrouded in secrecy. They are always, they don't unveil them. So we need to unveil the mask behind. So if you have them in your custody, in the process of prosecution, it will lead to further disclosures. Disclosures as to who are the major sponsors. You can arrest all of these small boys, but then if the barons, if the people, the sponsors, the pillars behind all of these people are not identified and arrested and prosecuted, we're just scratching the surface.
But do you think the government has that capacity, has that courage to toe that line right now if they have to?
Okay, I tell you that after God is government. After God is government. The almighty power is vested in the government. Our sovereignty is in the hands of the government. And the primary responsibility of government is protection of life and properties. So when this fails, then government has failed. If you look at our constitution, it's the first fundamental human rights of the people, the protection of the rights of the people, and security. So what I'm trying to say is that you want to ensure that government cannot claim not to have the capacity. We still have kept on increasing the budget for security because we know we are more or less like in a state of war. So government must, as a matter of urgency, develop more capacities, because there are Nigerians who are still eager to join, eager to work, eager to really offer their service. So we must put in enough resources to develop the capacity. Let us assume that we lack the full capacity. That is not to say we don't have capacity at all. Whatever little capacity we have, how much have we deployed those little capacities? And then how well are we developing the capacity and ensuring that we can save this nation of this problem?
But what do you think is the biggest challenge because that capacity you're talking about, there's so much inside of that capacity. When you talk about capacity, this a lot goes into it. But what do you think are the challenges inherent in not having that capacity, if at all? Because the people, you may say, okay, you have potential capacity, of course, all that can be there, but the people are waiting for the translation of that potential into the real tangible thing they can see.
The first government will claim is resource. Do we have the resources in terms of our earnings? a country that is just basically a mono economy. And the so-called mono economic, which is the oil, is dwindling by the minute. Not only that it's dwindling, there is competition in international markets. And then all of us are chasing after just one resource, which is the oil. That is where the state, the federal, the local, everybody relies. We have abandoned the internally generated revenue. Every state now, government is saying over time, they may not be able to even, pay salaries. They may not be able to even dispense enough to the various, other federating board units, because we have abandoned the internally generated revenue. Everybody is chasing just one good. So one capacity may be lacking by way of resources. Second one is the personnel. How well have we been able to reorientate our higher institutions to reflect our needs in this time? Our curriculum is still tailored towards the Western education, the hop or loy type of education that we're bequeathed with by our colonialists. We have not been able to practicalize and make our education to meet our current challenges. Some of the courses we still offer in the university, our polytechnics have become, a school of accountancies, school of business studies, whatever. The polytechnics were originally established for the purpose of developing the technological know-how for the nation. So, except we have to change our curriculum, we have to reappraise our education. So what I'm trying to say is that in terms of personnel needed, human capacity, we may also be lacking because we're not developing human capacity. How much time have we kept our institutions under lock and key? How well do we allow the institutions to run flow? How well have we been able to even change headship of the various institutions without anything running into murky waters? Our institutions have become a political empire. Politics have eaten deep into our system, even our academic system. People are no longer doing pure academics, and the academics are not being encouraged. How much are we putting into research? All our research institutes, their products, how well have we been able to put them to use? So we have this marriage of issues which we have to tackle.
So all of these, and all of these is supposed to be aggregated by leadership, coordinated by leadership.
Yes.
And as it is right now, everyone is calling on the president, from Potiskum in Yobe State to Otukpo in Benue State to Ikpadakwa in Akwa Ibom State, whatever it is, everyone is calling on the president. But we know that there are layers of leadership, down there. How come people don't look up to the immediate leadership where everyone's looking to the center? And the center is very far, far away.
Because you have made the center to be over-bloated. Every attraction is at the center. So when you make every attraction to be on the center, then every focus will be at the center. People are saying we have federated as a people, as a nation. We have existed for over 100 years. And don't forget, even when the amalgamation took place, the provision for us to reassess our system was also made. After 100 years, we should have been able to sit down and look at our federating relationship, to look at how well have we fared in the last 100 years. What are those things that we need to rejig? When people are saying restructuring, does it mean that you dismember the nation? No. Anybody who is thinking of dismembering this nation, the person is undoing himself, because our existence is dependent on our diverse nature. So I am an advocate for us to sit down and look at what has gone wrong in the last 100 years. What are the things we can do better than how we're doing it? Why do we have to over-concentrate power at the center? Why is everybody wants to go to the center? Why don't you devolve power equitably to the other federating units, to the other arms of government? Today, the JUSOM are on strike. Everybody is saying, look. So the center will continue to remain the focus of attention. Everybody will continue to look at the head of state, the president. Everybody will continue to look at the governors. Everybody will continue to look at the chairman of councils. But whereas there are other components that are part of the makeup of what leadership should be.
Yeah. All right. Now, dovetailing from leadership, I'd like to talk about a book here written by you, Undeterred, The Pendulum Swings On. And this is a must-read. I like the way that the foreword is written. Part of the foreword written by Babatunde Raji Fashola, former governor of Lagos State and Honorable Minister of Works and Housing, says that, be warned, don't be carried away by the stimulating narrative. Endeavor also to learn the lessons of life as the pendulum swings on. He does. I really love the way he put the forward there. Now, talk to us about this book, The Pendulum Swings On.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, from the topic of the book, you say undeterred. And I like to break it down to say that when you say undeterred, it means that you must be unstoppable.
Okay.
As a nation, we must be unstoppable, irrespective of our challenges. And you say the pendulum swings on. What we're trying to say is that the pendulum does not swing back. It swings forward. Therefore, we must be forward-looking. We are faced as a nation with challenges of leadership, challenges of development. But then, are we going to give up? Are we going to give in? So this book focuses my autobiography. And I have just tried to do something which, of course, has become quite, uncommon in our society today. So many people have gone down the drain. They are already in the grave with all their brains, with all their contribution, with all their wherewithal. So people die with their knowledge. Today, what we have problems in terms of our even healthcare system is because our parents, those who know the little herbs and all of those, died with the knowledge. There were no documentation. So people have died without documenting their history and then making their history available for people to learn from. If you look at the book, it's about my challenges in life, my early life, how I was brought up in the barracks, how I grew up in a polygamous house of almost about 30 children, and how we have to compete even as growing people. You have to compete for limited resources. I was born by a police officer who barely retired as a sergeant in the Nigerian police force. Then with little resources, I had to train all of us. And then we have to compete. So if you are not ready, they drop you by the wayside. So how competition must, and how do we look at, when you look at the topic of the paper that is to be presented by Babatunde Fashola himself, the Minister of Works and Housing, he's also going to talk. I'm using my program, of course, which of course is my 60 plus 1 birthday.
Oh yes, exactly. Happy birthday!
Thank you very much. I'm also using it to promote a national discourse. You will see that the former governor of Lagos State will be talking about, reflections of our lives as a cacophony of the challenges of nation building. So what I'm trying to do is that we can all sit down. What touches all must be debated by all. You must be able to put in your quota, I put in my quota. Rather than go and do a flamboyant party, everybody come and eat, and then nothing to go home with. People must come to my birthday and go with knowledge. The program is slated for tomorrow, which is my 61st birthday. The program holds at Lagos Country Club at 3 p.m. And then the governor of the state, Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, of course, we were colleagues in the cabinet of Lagos State. We've worked very closely, a very intelligent and very, very forward-looking young man, who, of course, is also propelling Lagos to greater heights. He is also expected as the special guest of honor. Of course, the chairman of our great party is supposed to be chairman, Mr. Babatunde, chairman of the occasion. And then we're expecting Sir Adetibutu Keshington, who will be presenting the book. Asiwaju is the father of the day, the Jagaban Bugui himself. Then people kept on saying, why are you putting all politicians? Why are you not? But I'm saying that everybody operates his own balance. But of course, I have mixed with the business communities. There are a lot of other people from the business communities, professionals are coming, my colleagues. I don't know how many professors will be at the book launch. I don't know how many, bureaucrats will be there. But I said it's a discourse on its own.
Exactly.
So that's what the book is about, our existence. How well can we allow people to profit from our existence?
One area that that I would like you to talk about briefly before we go is your involvement in student union activities. The point there is there are so many young people who are in that because that's where leadership evolves from, especially in our days where we were in the university, where you start expressing yourself and becoming self-aware. Talk to us briefly about that, your experience in that regard.
I was president of the student union. I've been president of the alumni association. I have been so many things. I've led so much. I was in the struggles fighting against the military juntas, the then Idi Agbon Buhari regime. I was in the
cave. In the 84.
Yes, in the 80s, the early 80s. And I led a robust student unionism. I was the chairman of the League of the West for the coordination of the National Association of Nigerian Students, coordinating the entire struggles. What were we fighting for then? We're saying we wanted, a democratic. Now we have a democratic rule. So, but how well have we used our democracy? How well have we acted on the people? So, it's a whole lot of issues.
All right. Undeterred, the pendulum swings on. So it means that life, we have to keep moving on, like you put it. And I must thank you for putting all of these ideas together. There's a lot to learn from here, from this book, for young people, for entrepreneurs, for children, for leaders, for academia, and all of that. Thank you very much for putting all of these together, because it goes a long way. If everyone is writing a book of their experiences, it goes a long way for how we crossbreed ideas and all of that. And happy birthday to you too.
Thank you very much. And thank you, viewers.
All right.